I am Shusara Kumara. Welcome to Satsang. You are beginningless. You are endless. You are divine. Good evening, everyone. This is Shusara Kumara, and you're listening to Satsang with the Shambhala Center. I'm joined tonight by PLAN, Tim, Megan, and Linda. They are our core council members for the Shambhala Center for Spiritual Awareness, and they like to come and help me every week do this program for all of you. So let's go ahead and get started. Get yourselves nice and centered, and we'll do a quick clearing. Take a nice deep breath. Mother, Father, God, that I am, through the great central sun, through the great central sun hierarchy, through the office of the Christ, through the order of Melchizedek, I call upon Archangel Michael to bring the sapphire blue ray. Cut away, cut away, cut away anything in all of our four lower bodies, not emanating directly from our I am presence. I now call on Archangel Zachiel, keeper of the violet flame. Blaze, blaze, blaze the violet flame through all of our four lower bodies. Transmute, transmute, transmute all the psychic debris Michael has cut free. I now bring forth the invincible ring pass knot and the mirror blue light of invisibility to completely surround each of us. And I call forth a shaft of pure Christ light for each one of us listening. I ask that they be brought to the center of the earth, where I call on Archangel Gabriel to seal them, and I ask that the legions of Michael completely surround each tube of light. And now I ask that our vibrations be raised high above the psychic and astral worlds to the highest realm of illumined truth we each can attain at this time. And now, Mother, Father, God, we place ourselves in service to you and to humanity. PLAN and I place ourselves in service to all of you tonight. We ask that only that which is direct from you be permitted into our perceptions, and that all else of the lower mind be kept out. And we ask that only that which is direct from you be permitted through us. And because we have asked this, we consider it so. So be it. Stay in that space just for a minute. I want you to do a little visualization for me really quick. You're nice. Imagine yourself standing firmly rooted to the earth. I just want you to take a minute, 3 nice deep breaths in and out. And I want you to visualize pure crystalline white light coming into your crown chakra, coming down straight through the line of chakras and grounding in through the feet, all the way down to the soul star in the center of the earth. 3 nice deep breaths. All right. Do it from the heart, everybody, not from your head. Nice deep breath. One more. Very good. Thank you. Oh, that last one was good. Huh? Yeah, it was. All right. I apologize for not having a live program for you last week. The energies for the full moon hit early, and I was in bed. I got hit pretty hard. I got taken out right in the afternoon. I had no idea it was coming. And I ended up in bed for the night. And the energies have been really strong. There's big shifting going on. I literally have even been experiencing, I'm sure I'm not the only one. Gosh, was it like, it was over the weekend, I don't know when, experiencing just even physically feeling like I was spiraling, just kind of from the inside out, just spiraling. Kind of like bed spins, but, but not. Right. Okay. So if you're in the middle of that, it's all good. The shift is good. Change is good. Yeah. I have no idea what we're going to talk about tonight. So I'm going to ask my crew here to come up with something for me. Yeah. Is there anything left over from the last time we spoke that needs to come up again? Or because what we did tonight in Charlotte is really not. I could go over that on the air, the raise a light. I don't know if it's as important as the other work that we do here on the air. Anybody have a thought there? Raise a light for the people listening.
We've done it before, so if it's in the archives.
We have done it, and it's in the archives on our website. Okay, all right. But I will say, just in line with that, because it's just good to know that what you need to recognize and understand as far as how you're energetically functioning, this is a good thing to know, is that from source itself, source is emanating energy, and you are comprised of the rays of light. And as such, you take in divine energy into all of the chakras, and then each chakra is meant to emanate a very specific ray of light from it into the world. And what has happened here on the planet because of the fall of consciousness is that divine light that comes into each chakra gets disqualified when it hits the chakra. And so what you are emanating out is not divine light. It's discordant energy. So just for the sake of saying it again, the colors that you are familiar with for each chakra, each of the main 7 chakras, are not the correct colors in the sense that what you know as far as red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, indigo, those are the colors that would be associated with the disqualified energy. And even though this information is quite ancient, there aren't a lot of people who have this awareness. I think what happened, my guess is that people who were psychic and who could see auras, because they were seeing these colors, I think they just, if they didn't have any teaching, they would have just assumed that was the color they were supposed to be. Yeah. So they may have seen the aura color and it may have looked dirty or clogged, and then they would have seen that as a blocked aura, a blocked chakra. But I think they probably just assumed that the color was accurate. The color's not accurate. And so when you have that understanding, you actually can go in and clear each chakra to make sure that the light, the quality of the light coming in is then reflected out as well. So you're breathing in or magnetizing to you that light, and then you're there to radiate it out into the world. And so obviously it makes sense to be as clear a channel as possible, because then what you radiate out into the world has far more impact from a place of truth service than radiating out disqualified energy. Yeah. Even with the best of intentions, if it's disqualified, it's disqualified. So if you want more information, it would have been sometime last year that we did that show. I guess you could go back to the archives and read the descriptions, and one of them would say we talked about the rays of light. Okay. And if anyone seriously wants me to do it again, then you can contact us through BBS or at what questions for Shusara at theshambhalacenter.org. Okay. Good. So, everybody, what are we going to talk about tonight? Linda just went, "Oh, you're kidding." Don't put us on the spot, please. The thing is, and this is what's a little tricky, usually something just comes up and then I just start talking about it. But if you were sitting in my position, the trickiest part is that I have, because of my journey, I have so much knowledge that sometimes I don't know what to talk about. Like I could talk and talk and talk for days, but sometimes you just don't really know what needs to be covered tonight. Yeah. Anybody? Come on, Pelia. I always look to them, and the reason is I look to them because they're still more in touch with what it feels like to be on the closer to beginners seekers side of things. So they have those questions that they can still pull up. Like I can't even do that anymore. I forget the questions beginners ask. So I have to look to people sometimes to be like, ask me something, because I can't do it on my own. What you got, Tim? Come on over. Come on down. Come on down.
So what I'm working on is just, working through my emotions, and, anger is like the first one I'm working through before I get to all the pain and whatnot. So in any case, my question that I think other people may have is in terms of like the right use of anger, because I've always had this thing that anger is bad and you should express it and you'll piss people off and all that. And now I'm discovering, well, maybe I really should have just been expressing myself. And so now I'm wondering, it's not good to hold it in, but when is a good opportunity? When is it right? I don't know, quote unquote, right to express anger?
Okay. What a lovely question. And here's the thing, and I'll speak for Tim here for a second because he walked away. A fear a lot of people have when they recognize that it's time for them to truly embrace the negative aspects that have been repressed for so long. A big fear comes up, and you experience this for yourself about, gosh, if I start tapping into it, what if it's this like never ending kind of pit of anger, and I end up being this like angry, horrible person all the time, And let me just say one thing quickly that people never stop to think about. The only reason anger escalates to the point it does is because there's so much charge behind it. Okay, so if we go back to the primal imprint, okay, in the moment of perceived separation, and if we run the cycle a few times, what we see is this: that at the first moment where it was recognized, or not even recognized, projected that there was separation in place, that there would have been some surprise to that, and some confusion as to what happened. And then, maybe it wouldn't have been a negative thing. Yeah. It could have been something like, oh, like this is different. But then something there was like, it's time to go back. And so attempts were made to go back. And then when consciousness kind of experienced that bounce off of the glass wall that separated separated it from God, then second time around, there's real surprise and real confusion. What just happened? Because that time I had an intent to, go back, and it didn't work. And then maybe something else started to get created in there. Okay. And it would have been a low level of maybe a little bit of frustration. Yeah. But not anger. Certainly. Because is it a lost cause at that point? No, you haven't had enough experience with it to really get angry about it, right? So it goes around, and at some point, it gets, each time that consciousness experienced kind of being bounced away from what it was trying to get to and from what its expectation was, there was more letdown, see, every time it happened. So you go from disappointment, and then over the course of however many times it happened, now you're moving from disappointment into deeper pain. And then that's when anger starts to come, right? Because anger comes out of pain. But even then, it wouldn't be rage, would it? See? Once it starts as anger. So you can look at yourself. Like if you go through the drive-thru at McDonald's and you order a hamburger and some French fries, and you get in your car and you're halfway down the street and you open it up and you got chicken nuggets instead, right? You might be angry, but you're most likely not going to be enraged, right? See? Now you go back and you get your order fixed and you leave again and they got it wrong again. I'm guessing you're going to be angrier, correct? You see? And so this is what consciousness experienced. So when you get to the point where you're ready to get into the anger, which you've been doing, the projection is that it's going to be what it always has been. It's not the case. Because once the energy has been released, right? You're not starting from the same place anymore. You see? Yeah. See? You see what I'm saying? Like you right now you're like a plugged bottle with a cork on it, and you take the cork off, it's like you've shaken up a soda bottle and all this stuff is spewing out, right? But at some point it loses its the energy behind it. And then it can't do it that way again. You'd have to recork it. You see what I'm saying? So once you've tapped into that and you have really let it all come out, now in the future, when something happens, you won't, you're not going to respond from that same level of emotion because there isn't anything behind it. So the only reason you have someone who explodes, when they get angry over the slightest thing is because there's so much sitting behind it that they refuse to look at, right? And that's the fuel that flames the fire when they explode. But when you get in and you release it all, there's no fuel there. So then going forward, if something irritates you, it may irritate you, but you'll have far more capacity to actually function rationally, even though you're irritated. See? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense because that's, it's a fear that's really unfounded. It's really unfounded. And it's exactly what the mind would do because of course, what's it want to do? It wants to keep you from going in and experiencing the pain. So how do I do it? Well, let's project out another fear, that fear being that I'm going to turn into this irrational, highly volatile person. Because I can feel it coming out of me. Oh my God, that's what I'm turning into. And that's exactly the opposite of what's happening. That highly volatile person is in there. And it's the one that is responsible for a lot of the junk that's going on. But once it gets released, it's done. And then when something comes, if it moves through as anger, it moves through as anger. But it's not the anger that's, breaking lamps and punching holes in walls and, screaming at someone at the top of your lungs and blowing out your throat chakra. You see? Yeah. And there are times when, when you're at a certain level, there are times when that energy comes and it needs to move through you. And it's really more about you serving as a reflection to the person on the other side of you. Because a lot of times what ends up happening is that person needs to see themselves. And that's what they need to see. They need to see the angry person. Mm-hmm. Because that's the piece of them that they have repressed and that they refuse to see in themselves. And you can become that for others. Now, of course, that's not the point where you're still highly identified. That's not what that is. You recognize it later when it happens because you're there just kind of witnessing. You're not part of the story. Yeah. And you know it. So you walk away like, wow, that was interesting. Like smiling as you walk away, not affected by the energy of it. So that's a good question. And it's a necessary question because it is, aside from the fear of death itself, that's probably the biggest fear you come up against in your work, is going into the places where you've identified and created this well of pain over whatever the story is behind it. They're horribly painful to move through in the moment. And again, what you can't see is that on the other side of it, the identification with it ultimately falls apart or falls away completely, right? So that when you look back now on that incident again, there's just nothing there. It's just gone, you know, where you used to not even be able to look at it because it would stir up all this stuff and it was too hard, so you wouldn't look at it. Even if it was brought to you, you wouldn't look at it, right? Then you get to a place where you're willing to start peeking at it, but you're probably only willing to do a certain amount of peeking, you know? I'll turn the channel on for 20 seconds, but then I'm turning it off again, little by little. And then you get to the point where you're like, okay, you know, let's just open it up and look at it. Each time the level of identification you have with it starts to lessen, you know? So once you really open the floodgates and jump right in and say, okay, let's have it, you know, go ahead and hit me. Let's just do it. Then at that point, once you've walked through that one, it can just be done, you know? And then you move into a space where you're capable of seeing the other side of it from a completely different place. And it's just not personal anymore. It doesn't matter what the hurt is. And I know that it sounds impossible because if, you know, people listening, if you're someone out there who was beaten as a child or you had like a really horrendous experiences with people in your life that have been just horribly emotionally painful, I know that sounds like, yeah, right. You know, you say that because you didn't have hurt. You know what? Everybody has their hurts. Everybody does. And the bottom line is truly when you have walked through it and seen what there is to see, it just stops being personal anymore. It just does. It just does. Especially when you can come out the other side with a level of compassion that you never had before. Because you have to remember the thing that holds that pain in place too, also, is you hold the other person as separate, right? They're your perpetrator and you're the victim to them and you hold them separate. And what you can't see because of your story is that the only thing that's going on there is that patterned consciousness repeated its pattern on the patterned consciousness that you consider to be you, right? But that patterned consciousness that did that was programmed from a place of complete innocence. So a baby comes into the world, right? And yes, it carries its karma with it. But outside of that, it comes into the world from a very innocent place, right? And then over the course of the first 5 years, it's imprinted with the consciousness of the primary caregivers, both sides. And all of it gets imprinted. Now, is it something that the caregivers do on purpose? No. They're just doing what they think is right to do in any given moment, right? People aren't out there trying to be evil, contrary to popular belief. You know, people are doing the best that they can do in the moment, given what they've got to work with. Yeah. So, you know, from the side of being the victim is, you know, was it a terrible thing that happened to you? Well, of course. But we have to understand that it came out of innocence. The one who got patterned didn't ask for the patterning. The child doesn't ask for it. It just happens here, right? And once the patterning is in place, unless you have someone there to guide you out of it, it's in place, right? Even if you're the victim of abuse and you, because of the abuse, hold to the space that I will never do that, you completely polarize against it, remember that you pattern after the winning position. And if the winning position was the abuser, that will be the most natural thing for you when you get triggered in the same type of situation, right? So if that happens and you have the enough control that you allow that the part of you that said, I will never do that, to maintain control, it's an even greater battle that you're fighting than it would have been if you just allowed yourself to fly off the handle. You see? because reactive mind will just do what comes naturally. And then something else steps in and goes, no, don't do it. Well, later, when you're clearer and you have more presence of mind, you do that because it's the right thing to do. But initially, it's because it's all stuff you've identified with. Because you're still holding like this is the right thing to do and that's the wrong thing to do and this is good and that is bad, and so you're holding it so tightly that you have this battle that's being waged. Yeah. And that's the stuff that leads to this compaction of energy over and over and over and over. So, you may have someone who can do that for a while, kind of keep it together for a while, but at some point something's going to tip. And then you've got people who literally go postal, right? That phrase. Something tips and it's just like, poof, they're like a bomb that just went off because they held it back for as long as they could. But at some point it's got to break. Why? Well, because that's the patterning. And the winning position always comes out on top. It just does, But you have to recognize that it came from complete innocence, just complete innocence. So for as evil as a parent seemed to be, on one level, it was all they knew to do. Remember, the mind is not conscious. It is not conscious. This is huge. I hope you all get this. The mind is not conscious. Therefore, the personality, which is part and parcel of the mind, is not conscious. So the people walking the planet are walking around literally in an unconscious state. And the only thing that's running is a program. That program is the program of the victim and the perpetrator and the savior, all playing around together, bouncing off of each other, you taking on one role, moving into another, and bouncing to another. And that's all that's going on here, right? So the perpetrator to you, the one who abused you, was unconscious when it happened. And how is there fault in that? Do you see? I used to look at it like, if you have a child who was raised, here in America in your standard kind of middle-class white family, and then you walked in one day and expected your kid to speak German, and they couldn't do it, and you blamed them for that? Does that make any sense? You see how irrational that is? You have a child who's never even heard a language, and you're going to expect that child to know how to speak it? It's completely irrational, yeah? Why would you expect pattern consciousness to do anything other than what it does? It's unconscious. There's no one there to choose differently, you see? There's no one even home. It's a program. The program runs. The program runs, it does terrible things. The program runs, it's the victim of the terrible things. The program runs, it's the savior that comes to the rescue of the one who just got hurt. Sometimes it's the savior who comes to the rescue of the one who's doing the hurting. But all of them are part and parcel of the same exact program. And it doesn't change. And there is nothing personal about any of it. Nothing. So your life seems so personal to you, and all of your hurts seem so personal to you, and they aren't. They just aren't, because you are not your program. And the one who hurt you was not their program either. And can you find forgiveness in your heart when you recognize that all you were looking at was a program doing what it's programmed to do? That person witnessed one side of it, you witnessed the other side of it. You see, in this reality, we can look at it and say it's wrong. And is it true? Yes, of course. In this reality, it's absolutely true. Of course it is. No one's downplaying anybody's suffering here, yeah? But at the same time, as seekers, you're called to rise above it. How could I expect more of you when all you had was what you had, right? Maya Angelou, you did what you did because you didn't know better. When you knew better, you did better. That's the whole point. That's what you're here to do. To move out of the program and to move into a space where you can make conscious choice. Do you understand that up until this point in your life, you have not even had choice? The program has no choice. It runs what it runs. Now, it's very convincing that you're choosing certain things, but don't be misled here. You are not. You may think you're taking 2 or 3 pieces of information and weighing them back and forth and choosing the appropriate one. The program's doing it for you. It has convinced you that it's you. Now, it's not you. It's a program. And you can rise above that and actually move into a space of choice. That's what we're here to do. See? We're here to come into the world and be here in the world so that when things come up and the program runs, and it's going to run, now you can be in it from a different place. Tim, we were talking about this just this week, yeah? You can be in it from the spot of now. I have enough understandings. I have spiritual understandings that are in place where I know what right action is. I can see what's running here. See, you see both simultaneously. And now you have choice. What are you going to do? Are you going to run a program or are you going to function from your higher understandings? It's not the program that's going to function from the higher understandings. That's what you're called to do. If you can just make a choice from your higher understanding, that allows the divine to come in and do what it needs to do in the world. But you have to show up to make the choice, you see? And if that level of consciousness can't show up to make the choice, the divine can't get here. Do you understand? It can't get here. You see, you ever hear, God needs a body? That's it. It's not that it needs any body. God needs a level of consciousness that can see both and choose the right one. You have to get out of your own way. If the program is just allowed to continue running, because what was one thing that came up for you we were looking at? Someone who says, well, I'm having a really hard time when things like that come up because I feel like if it was the right thing to do, it should be easy, right? That whole concept. It's just a concept. The concept that, well, if it's right, if it's meant to be, it should fall into place. It should be easy. No. See, the exact opposite is the case for most people, because what you have to do is learn to function outside of the program. So you have to learn to function in a space that feels unnatural for you, uncomfortable. I'm looking for the perfect partner who, like, as soon as I meet the person, I feel so comfortable and so at home. You know what? It's usually 95% of the time a recipe for disaster. Why? Because that's the person who's going to fall into your pattern. As opposed to, I met someone and all the things look great and it just doesn't quite feel right. Great. Run toward it. Run, sprint. You see? And it could be said of anything. It could be said of anything. Go ahead, Tim. Come on over.
I just want to comment on that part a little bit because I've always used to think that I was cheating. I know this has come up, before, and this is one of those things where, now I realize I felt like it was cheating because it didn't feel right. It didn't feel natural. And so, like, even what you were saying to me before on Monday, I think it was, like, you have to just fake it till you make it. And so now I realize that's what this is too. It's where you're functioning outside of your patterning, and so it doesn't feel natural. And so to me it feels like I'm faking, feels like I'm cheating, like I should, if it's not easy, then there's something here for me to look at and I'm not looking at it, and so I'm cheating. But now I'm getting it. I've actually, it's going to feel hard. It's going to feel weird.
Yes.
But I have to just kind of do it. Sort of fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That's excellent. And that's so accurate. It is so accurate, especially where you are, where the patterning is really, really deeply ingrained, like those real anchor points for everybody. Because, oh my gosh, you start functioning outside of them and it feels like everything is wrong about it, you know? And why? Well, of course, it's programmed that way to keep you from doing it. Because the mind always wants stability and it wants to be in spaces where it feels good, right? The mind is in perpetual pain. So it likes to slap a Band-Aid on anything it can at any given time so it can feel good. Y'all wonder why addiction is so prevalent? Because people just want to feel good. Why? Because there's nothing that feels good about the lower mind. There just isn't. It's born out of pain. It's born out of fear. What's good there, right? So we have to do what we can to like medicate ourselves to a place where we feel okay. And the way we do it is by engaging in our patterning over and over and over. But it doesn't have any holding power, see? So initially you go into something because it feels good, but it can't hold it because it's still coming out of the same pain and coming out of the same garbage, the same unmet needs and desires that the personal self holds in place, right? And so ultimately it has to fail. Why does it have to fail? It has to fail because you have to be the victim. Because that was the experience of consciousness. Consciousness was victimized in the worst way possible. You know, I mean, the abused child, that's that experience. Oh my gosh, like what did I do that was I was so bad that I'm completely unforgivable. God can't even forgive me. God does not want me back. I'm so horrible at just the root level. God doesn't even want me back. Right? That and I laugh, but it's very serious. That's exactly what mind is experiencing. See, self-loathing, very, very deep self-loathing, very deep. And people have no concept that that's sitting down there until they start getting down into it. And then they start to recognize that they are creating things in their lives that's just going to reflect to them their own self-loathing. But then they always blame it out there, see? And then that keeps them from ever really seeing what's happening. So with every, remember what I said 2 weeks ago, with every, quote unquote, negative experience, it's actually your gift. It's there to show you. It's bringing you into a space of pain. Fantastic. Use it. Because it's showing you an area where you're still highly identified. Yeah. In an area that's just not healed. It's a mess. And you're living it in the physical. Great. Take full advantage of it, For as much as you want to curl up in the corner and just fade away. You can't. You've got to stand up and fight. You got to fight it. It takes enormous courage to do this work. I say that so many times. I don't. And how many of you understood that until you actually hit that spot where you got it? Tim's looking at me like, yeah. How many times did I say it to you and you were kind of like, oh yeah, really? Courage? It takes courage to go skydiving, right? But not this. You're just asking me to look at my life. Write about my experiences. There's no courage in that. Huh? Come on over.
Yeah, I think I didn't really get it because I was imagining like other people and what they're doing or what they're involved in. And so I would think, oh, I can do that. And that's not a problem for me. Therefore, it won't take any courage. But, I was really just avoiding looking at my own issues. And so when I started doing that, then it was like, oh boy, this is actually pretty hard. When it's actually my stuff that I'm having to look at. So yeah, actually walking it and actually experiencing this, I've seen what you're saying is pretty dead on. But until I actually kind of owned it for myself, it was just kind of words out there. One in one ear, not the other. Yeah.
Cool. It is truly the hardest work you'll ever do. It just is. They're all nodding their heads. Not Megan. She's looking at me like, oh, now she is. She's deep in contemplation. It is the hardest work you'll ever do. No question. Because it has to bring up the entire program for dissection, you know. Self-inquiry it's a big deal. And the thing is that psychology can only take it so far, and that's the unfortunate part. I wish I could sit with hordes of psychologists and work with them for about a month, and then have them go out and do this work, because people trust psychologists, because it doesn't seem too woo-woo. And psychologists are great for their purpose here in the world, but they're missing such a major component. They can't see that, training someone to kind of repolarize from one side to another side doesn't do a thing to heal them, truly. It doesn't heal it. And is it good to say move from major depression and be trained to have a better self-image and function in that? But well, of course it's good. Of course it's good. So do not hear me wrong. I am not downplaying psychotherapy or anything like that. Okay. I'm just saying that for someone who wants true healing, you can't get it that way. And Linda's looking at me. She's testament. She did that route. She did that route. Years. Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't, and I'll speak for her for a second because I know she won't mind. It wasn't until she started this work, she actually took herself off of antidepressants, very hardcore antidepressants. How many years were you on them? 17 years. Yeah. And literally weaned herself off of them through this work. Right. And the thing is that she had to kind of learn that it was okay to feel, when you're in perpetual pain, does medication have a purpose? Yes. I mean, for the person who's never going to make great spiritual strides in this lifetime, absolutely. Absolutely, medication has a purpose. I would never say it's a bad thing. But for someone who wants more, and who wants to go deeper, it will keep them from experiencing it. And partially because it literally changes the chemical composition in the brain. So it makes it harder for you to access what needs to be accessed to truly get in and do the work. Right. Now, that's not to say that the work can't be done while you're on medication, because it can. Right. It's a little more challenging only because the brain chemistry is a little different at that point. But it was an interesting thing watching Linda, because as Linda's journey went, she had to learn that there were times where she felt like she was falling into depression because she knew that pattern so well. And she had to learn that it was okay. Yeah. And that she could actually sit in that space again and not run to her drugs. Right. But to just allow it, knowing that if she just allowed it and stayed with it long enough, that she was going to see something that needed to be seen. And so that's what happened to her over and over again, And each time she came out of it with experiential understanding. You see, this work is completely experiential. It's the only way you will ever move off the life-death cycle is through your own experience. You will never do it by hearing someone else's. You have to walk it. There's just no way around it. Now, other people's experiences are very valid and very useful, right? And they can be very encouraging and give you a sense of what will come. And of course, the mind loves to use it when it can. Bless you. But you can't get there unless it's your experience. And so, yeah, it takes a lot of courage, And it took her a lot of courage to get herself off the medication, but it took her even more courage the last time that you had something come up for you to actually look at that right in the face and walk through that, didn't it? Yeah. Even though she's been off meds for how many years? 3? No? Yeah. So 3.5 years. But this last one, was her biggest yet. And that's how it needs to be. The real biggies stay until the end, or close to it. And you're all absolutely fully capable of doing this work. If you truly want to experience unconditional love in your life, it's the only way you'll ever get there. is to do it from the inside out. Your world on the outside will never, ever change until you change it from the inside first. Because the outside world is a projection of your consciousness. And if your consciousness is polarized on the inside, look at what you're going to see on the outside. Just the same. Just the same. And when it's clear on the inside, it doesn't matter what's happening on the outside because your reality will be one of peace. Even if that's not what the collective is experiencing. See? Okay. That's it for tonight. I guess we're time for meditation. Thank you all very much for joining me tonight. And we will be back with you next Thursday. So much love to you all. Good night.
prachodayat. Bhurvuvasvaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. Bhurvuvasvaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhyo Yo Nah Prachodayat.
You are beginningless. You are endless. You are divine.